Welcome to Homeschool Tacklecast, the podcast from the authors of the Homeschool Tackle Box Handbook and Workbooks.
We're here to help you discover your children's unique needs as learners. We'll help you apply this knowledge and stimulate your children's motivation, creativity, curiosity, and learning excellence.
We are Sue Notestein and
Nancy Keirsey.
We are veteran teachers with over 6 decades of teaching experience, and we come to you from teacherstacklebox.com/homeschool.
Loading your tackle box with the right tools will ensure homeschool is a rewarding and happy experience for both you and your amazing children. Hello, thanks for joining us today. Before we begin, we want to give a shout out to the homeschool educators that we met this month at the Midwest Parent Educators Homeschool Conference in Kansas City, Missouri. We were so fortunate to be chosen to both present a workshop and be a vendor at this conference. Everyone we met was so welcoming and kind. Now we feel like we're talking to old friends on this podcast. Thank you for a wonderful experience.
Hopefully you've been following our podcasts, and if so, you are aware that we hope to inspire you to create personal learning profiles for you and your children. And as these podcasts unfold, we will be sharing with you exactly what make up those profiles, information you need to find out about your children and yourself so that you can communicate most effectively and you can strengthen that teaching-learning relationship.
Our first podcast was an overview, while the second and third dealt with nibbler activities, exploring problem solving and empathy. Today we want to talk about personality style. A bit of background here to get us started. Throughout the years, there have been many attempts to define personality types. You have probably seen many clever little quizzes found in magazines, on Facebook, and other places on the internet that promise to reveal your true personality. Even though we know they are not scientific nor even accurate, they are really hard to resist.
But you should resist them if you want it to be useful at all. There are 2 personality tests that are supported by strong psychological fundamentals. Those are the Myers-Briggs personality test and the Keirsey Temperament sorter. And they are backed by scientific research and validation. They are both very complicated. They both involve 4 basic temperaments. There are lots and lots of questions to be answered. And when you actually score them, you end up with quadrants with detailed facets. And I don't know, I've done the test, and at the end, I still felt like I didn't know my own personality because it was too complicated.
Right, and it's hard to remember, what they
Yes.
say. Yes. But don't worry, we're not asking you to take these complicated tests. Fortunately for us, in 1979, a guy named Don Lowry, he was an author, teacher, and playwright, created a personality test called True Colors. He did this by incorporating the research used to develop the Myers-Briggs and the Keirsey Temperament sorter. His personality test provides a valid, easily understood, and very user-friendly assessment. It's simple, fun, fairly accurate, and easy to remember, so it's very useful to educators.
And then in the final step of evolution of these personality tests, Mary Missison in 2001 authored a book showing our true colors, explaining the true colors test, what it means, and how to apply it to life. And out of that, she developed a website. And there are 2 websites we want you guys to actually go to because both of those websites provide you with free assessments. If you go to the True Colors website, you will have to pay to take the test. But if you go to one of these 2, you will have a free online assessment that you and your children can take. And we will include the websites in the show notes at the end of the podcast. One of them is personalitylingo.com, and the other one is called personalityacademy.com. And so those are the 2 you're going to need to check to be able to get those assessments.
So if you go to these websites and you and your children take this test, you're going to come out and see that you have a dominant color. Now, of course, we all are a mixture of all the colors, but usually there's a dominant color, and this is the one that you're really going to look at and see how people are different, and knowing this information, how you can use it. So right now, we're just going to give you a brief synopsis of the colors and what they mean, and then we're going to go into more detail as we get through this podcast. For instance, if your dominant color was gold, you're a gold planner, and the personality is very responsible, organized, and dependable. They listen well to authority and follow rules. That's kind of a very brief idea of what a gold personality would be. The blue connector personality is helpful, nurturing, caring, and empathetic. They're sensitive, loyal, and enthusiastic. That's kind of the way they are. The green thinker personality loves to analyze things and wants to understand how things work. A green is an independent thinker. The orange mover personality enjoys physical challenges and competition and might adapt an ends justifies the means attitude, finding it difficult to follow rules. Now, our first experience with colors was kind of interesting. Sue and I were teaching at our high school, and there were probably about 100, don't you think, 100 people that worked at that
Yes, at
high
least.
school with
Mhm.
teachers and everybody else. And everybody was in the gym. And they administered the test, so we found out what our colors were. And then we all went to a corner of the gym with our color group. Well, I'm primarily blue, so my group were counselors, and our vice principal was a minister, and artists, that sort of person. And the blues kind of think, I don't know, we think in different terms than say a gold. We're kind of all over the place and have lots of ideas, and probably hard to follow, by other people who aren't blues. So the idea was they gave us a project, and we were supposed to do a poster to present to the group about the project. Well, our poster looked like we had words going every which way directions. We had pictures on it. We had arrows. We thought it was perfectly reasonable, and we totally understood what it was. But when we stood up to present, after we presented ours, the gold over in the corner looked like they had a ruler or yardstick or something, because everything was in a straight line, and it was point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4. And that was really an aha moment for me, because I thought, oh my gosh, this is how they think, and this is how I think. No wonder sometimes there's problems with communication. So it was really interesting to find all that out.
Yeah, and of course I was attending the same thing, and although I was a green, and I still am, I guess, quite a bit of green, but I was in the green group, and I have no idea what our poster looked like. It was to a green person kind of a boring activity anyway, because it wasn't real. But what happened was, after we had done the posters and presented them, they put us into they rearranged the groups so that each group had each color. So the new group that I was in had gold and had blue and had green and had orange. And then we were given the challenge of trying to build a tower with blocks or something. So we were on the floor trying to move the blocks around and figure out what we were doing. And that was fine. And then the announcement came over the loudspeaker: oh, everybody stop whatever you're doing, leave everything where it is, come on into lunch. So I hopped up and I said, okay, let's go to lunch. And there was a woman in our group that said, I can't. And she started picking up the blocks. And she says, I can't leave this like this. And I said, they said it was fine. And she said, oh, I just can't do it. So I helped her pick up the blocks, and we got our little area nicely put away. And then we went and got in line, and we visited in line. And I discovered that this woman was the one that kept track of all the records, all the grades for all the students in this big school. She was a gold through and through. And I could see, oh my goodness, here I am, a green, and I could never do the job that she's doing, because it would not be as interesting to me, or as I need to gain knowledge when I'm learning about something, and that would be repetitive and it wouldn't work for me. But anyway, that was my aha moment. And so colors can be extremely eye-opening. So Do you see yourself as primarily one of the personality types above, or a combination of two or more? Knowing your color and those of your family will help you communicate more effectively, and you will be able to create a nurturing learning environment for each one of your children. So we're going to go through each color mentioned above, and we're going to focus on communication and learning environment. And we're going to begin with the gold planner. And one of the reasons we want to begin with the gold is because when we were at the conference and we did a workshop, we asked, after the people had taken their little colors test, and we said, okay, how many of you are golds? And a lot of them were golds. So we feel like a lot of you folks out there might be gold. Teachers tend to be gold or have at least a good dose of gold, or they can't keep track of everything. So a gold person is organized and disciplined. Gold children are willing to follow the rules, and the golds are keepers of our traditions. They are record keepers, like the lady in my school. They're inspectors and caregivers. They like to belong, and most elementary teachers are golds. So the conference folks showed that in the sense that people that attempt homeschool probably have quite a bit of gold in them.
When we were presenting at the homeschool recently, there were 80 plus people in that presentation, and there were very few blues, very few oranges, very few greens, and primarily gold. It was really interesting. So, those of you that are homeschooling and want to teach, yeah, you may have the exact right personality for that. You can stay organized and really present a lot of information. So I want to talk about when you're communicating with a gold. Like I said, my aha moment was seeing how that poster was and how the gold thought and how I think, and that I knew that I needed to make some changes, in communicating with a gold. And communication is the primary job of a teacher. So being able to communicate the way your child receives information is critical in order to be successful. So we're going to look at how a gold thinks about communication. They see it as purposeful. You've got a reason to share this information, and a gold like plans ahead, is respectful. And goals are really respectful and responsible people. They listen for details so they know what their part is. They size up a situation for what would be the most appropriate way to respond. Um, Remember, they're supportive of policies and rules. So if you're thinking, oh, we can skip these two rules and go to this when we're doing this project, they might not agree with that, or that might really stop them a moment as they think about that. They're detail oriented. They like things chronological. They're very loyal and devoted people. So it's important that, you think about that. You think about how they think before you communicate with them. Here's some tips for talking to a gold. Be prepared. Know what you're going to talk about. Give details. Be consistent. Show respect. Don't interrupt. Recognize their contributions and stay on target. That's really important. Don't go off in a direction they're going, what are you talking about now? We were talking about this and now you're talking about that. And they probably kind of lose respect for you if you do that. So those are different ways that you would communicate with a gold and be successful at it.
As far as your learning environment goes that you set up for your children, the gold children need a highly structured learning environment, which you as a gold teacher would provide. You as a blue or green or orange teacher might struggle with that. They like a stepwise process and specific outcomes. They want a list of items to complete with a deadline, and they want to be recognized for their hard work. Now, if you look at those criteria, they need structure in their learning environment, stepwise process, they want a deadline, and they want to be recognized. These are wonderful kids to have as students if you're a gold teacher. because they do it just the way you want to do it. And if you go in and you lecture and you have worksheets and you're this needs to be done by then, and they will just fall right in line, and they are wonderful to have in the classroom. However, not everybody is a gold. Not all your kids are golds. Nancy, you want to talk a little bit about the blue connector?
Sure. The blue connector, they look for significance, peace, and harmony in life. And as children, they find conflict stressful. The motivation is to feel authentic, reliable, and trustworthy. They often work in careers that involve helping people, such as ministry, psychology, nonprofits. They bring out the best in others and like to make personal connections. So, a blues world revolves around people, relationships, and fostering growth in themselves and others. They first focus their attention on establishing a relationship or reconnecting with the person. The information they wish to convey is woven into this relationship building endeavor. So remember that when you're talking with a blue, you don't just come up cold and start talking. You need to develop that relationship a little bit, who you are, and kind of warm up to them and that sort of thing, because they're going to be more receptive to what you have to say. So, looking at a blue communicator, they're friendly, they're helpful, they're empathetic. Sometimes they use metaphors and embellish points. They're optimistics. They're expressive with emotion, and they also always kind of want to foster and maintain harmony. So that's really important. Knowing this about a blue, you don't want to cause dissension or cause trouble or talk bad about somebody or something like that, because that's not how they see the world. And then tips for talking to a blue, acknowledge them, of course. They like to be part of the group and feel respected and that sort of thing. Show appreciation, which probably everybody needs, of every color. Include them. And then have patience, because they may be talking about some things that you think are not pertinent. They may be more concerned about how somebody's feeling than the job that's needs to be getting done. And then don't bark orders, because that will really, really turn them off. Remember, we're talking no conflict and harmony and that sort of thing. So keep all of that in mind when you are communicating with the blue.
Now, as far as the learning environment you're trying to provide for your students, the blues thrive in a collaborative learning environment. They want to work with others. They like to work in small groups. They want to share their thoughts and feelings, and they need to feel connected. Now, if you compare that to the gold, there's quite a bit of difference there. The gold needs that structured learning environment, while the blue wants small group where they can talk and visit and do things together and share their thoughts and feelings. And and that's a big difference in your classroom environment. So if you have one child that's a gold and one child that's a blue, you're going to have to figure out how to provide for each one of those what they need to get some of the material across. However, it's always good to go ahead and, for example, have your blue learner sit and go through the structured learning environment, learn whatever the material is, or sit and listen to you with the material. And then it's good to have your gold kids in small group also, even though that might be not what they like best. It's good for them, because out in the world they're going to get all different colors communicating with them, and they need to be able to do that. Now we're going to talk about the green thinker, and I was green, and so it's interesting to me. They are always questioning the status quo. They want to understand. They want to gain knowledge, and they strive for competency. They Once they may move on, once they master something. If they go out for a sport, or they learn to play tennis and they kind of master it, then they might get bored and forget it. Greens are inventors. They see the world as a set of systems and are very good at organizing for efficiency. If you've got green children, you will recognize them. They are always asking, why? Why? Greens are often scientists or doctors or analysts, researchers, people like that. So your greens need a little bit different environment than do a little bit different environment, a little bit different communication skills. Nancy, tell us about the communication with the green.
Sure. The greens, for the most part, communicate for the purpose of gaining and sharing information. And I thought it was interesting, Sue, when we were talking about the project that we did in the gym, that you said you weren't very interested because it wasn't real. And so that really would be a green because it has to be very purposeful. There has to be a reason to do things. So you get bored, if you're doing something just for the heck of it. Um, During a conversation, the attention is usually focused on the matter at hand, not on the relationship, like what the blue wants. So when you're communicating with a green, you need to know that they're logical and objective. It includes facts and information. They want the big picture first, and then if they need details, they'll ask you. They are very conceptual, they'll question, and as they're thinking and listening, they're also critiquing. They're always thinking as you're talking to them. So, tips for talking with a green, you need to give them time to ponder and think about what you're saying. Skip the small talk because that's going to bore them and they're not interested. Give a big picture and then fill in the details, as we said, if asked. If they get it from the big picture, they're not going to dwell on the details that you want to give them. And don't misinterpret their need for information as interrogation. So they're not being mean or anything when they're asking you questions. They're asking you questions that they sincerely need answers for in order to understand what you're talking about. So those are some things to really think about, when you're communicating with a green person.
And when you're setting up a learning environment for a green person, remember that the green learner wants to seek and find meaning in the learning. The learning has to be meaningful to them. If you give them 3 worksheets in a row of the same stuff and they get it on the first one, they are not going to do the second one and the third one because to them that's really a waste. They need to see the big picture with a clear view of the end goal. And they always start with why. So when you approach them and you're going to set up the environment with them and you're maybe setting them to a task or something, you need to give them the big picture and the goal and then set them to work on it. They need time to think and reflect. And so you can't fill the time up with structured activities like you would for the gold or with small group like you would for the blue. You need to actually let them work on their own. They need to work independently. And they love to create, they're motivated by creating, developing solutions to problems. So if there's a problem you're working with and they can think about it and say, well, what if we did this or what if they did that? That's very motivating for them, and they'll keep their mind on it because they want to try to solve the problem. Now on to the fun one. The fun one is the orange mover. Oranges want to do things now. They like variety and they're very spontaneous. They like to solve practical problems. They enjoy action, sports, and sporting events. They are artisans and craftspeople, painters and singers and actors. As children, they are always on the move. So if you have a child that is hard to keep in their desk and hard for them to focus, they may be orange. Oranges generally want to share their opinion the minute it hits their mind. They're interested in taking action and being expedient. So if they are interested in a story that they've read, the first thing they want to do is set the book down and then tell you the story and share it with you. And that's very normal for a gold. How do you communicate with the gold mover?
You mean the orange mover?
I mean orange. Yes, I always mix up orange and gold. Oh, thank you.
All right. So communicating with an orange mover, remember they're casual and playful. So they like for you to joke and laugh and have fun with them, and they're very spontaneous. Now oriented, they want to do whatever you're talking about right now. It's not in the future; it's now, and it's very fast paced. Changes subjects quickly. You can't dwell on one subject for a long time. Be straightforward. And they want you active and involved. Their brain is going 100 miles a minute, and they're ready, to do whatever you're saying. They're open, but you have to know how to reach them and not bore them. And they're mobile. They're moving. So the way to talk with an orange is use sound bites. Don't go into great detail because they're going to glaze over or just leave you. They'll be off doing something else while you're trying to explain. So really think about that you don't have their attention for a really long time. So choose carefully how you're going to present this information. If they are moving, move with them. Walk with them. Take a walk with them while you're talking about it. Whatever they need, so that they can digest the information. Appreciate their flair. Don't get discouraged or frustrated. Just understand who they are and what they need, and then allow for options and flexibility. You can't just be didactic. You need to tell them, give them options, because they're very creative and have a lot of ideas. And then lighten up, enjoy them. You know, don't be worried because you didn't get everything out, or they didn't process the way you did, or worry that they're not getting the information. Because if you really take all this into consideration when you're talking to an orange, you're going to be a pretty good communicator with them.
And now, if we look at the learning environment for the orange, they need a playful environment. Now think a minute. Your gold needs a structured environment. Your blue needs small group where they can talk and share. Your green needs to be left alone so they can learn independently. And now here's your gold, and they want a playful environment. Okay, this makes for problems when you're trying to work. But I know that you can do that if you're aware of it. If you're not even aware of it, you would just be frustrated when your gold child did not do what you as a gold teacher wanted them to do. So the orange learner, in their learning environment, they want a playful environment. They need short learning times, and they're good with frequent breaks. So you can put breaks into your day for stress. You can do some little activities at their seats, or even standing, and yoga's fun for that. I think we have some yoga for kids in the book. So little things that you can do, giving them breaks, will help. And then they like hands-on activities, and they love competition. And if you can put them in a situation where they're competing, they will work harder for you. So it's interesting when you try to think about that. I would stress that, first of all, you don't need to always work with your one child with their color. In other words, it's great for the blue child to go through the structured lecture and to play in the playful environment with the orange child. They all need to experience all four different environments. So you don't have to have them all set up. But at the same time, you want to be able to cater to what they do to learn best. And like with the blue learner, you guys in homeschool, you don't have a large group of kids, so you can put them all in small groups. So you may need to sit with that child and talk and be the group. The two of you can be the group, and that will work. Okay.
All right. So, when you think about teachers that you've had over the years, you may have had a teacher that you didn't like, or you didn't like the classroom. And it could be that the teacher was teaching the way they are from their personality. Let's say you have an orange teacher. It may be a little bit chaotic in that classroom, and maybe you're a gold person. And that might really frustrate you, because it's hard to adapt when you are different than your teacher. So it's just something interesting to think about in communication. Where did you have difficulty, or where were you not happy? And that's an idea that, the reason why you weren't comfortable in that particular classroom. You have to remember your children may be quite different from you in personality style. So remember that, when you had a teacher that wasn't comfortable, maybe it was because the personality style was different. And so it's important to recognize the uniqueness of each child and instruct, with their style in mind. You have to remember, if they don't learn the way you teach, you have to teach the way they learn. And so that's the whole reason for these profiles, to help you teach the way they learn.
We want to share a couple of stories about teaching from one color to students of another color. And I'm just thinking about math, because math is hard to teach. And it does need a lot of repetition for people to make sure they get the idea and the concept. And then others will have a tendency to get it quickly. But if you were teaching the gold student, of course, you would explain the concept, you would give them worksheets. And after they did the first worksheet, you'd give them the second worksheet. And then they would be quite happy to do that, to do those worksheets and get them right and feel like they were really progressing. The blue person wouldn't like that. They would rather you could share what you want them to accomplish in the concept and then put them in small group and let them work on the worksheets together, so that if one kid doesn't understand, then another one can help them. And so they're in small group and they're trying to work through it verbally and sharing with one another and all that. Now, if you go to your green kid might listen to what you had to say to get the concept, and he wants to take his worksheet and go off in the corner and do it. And if he does it right, he doesn't want any more. You don't want to keep giving them to him. You want to go ahead and let him do something else of value. So, and what about your orange? How do you get that to the orange? You could set up a contest where kids compete against one another. And like if you had a classroom, you could do this easily, where you set up 2 rows of children, you put a problem on the board and you say go, and the first 2 kids run up and they solve the problem, and then they come back and give the chalk to the next kid in line, and you put a new problem up and the next kid runs up, and you just see who wins. And it's just a fun way of, it used to be called ciphering. And that will keep the orange kids involved, and all the other children will be watching every time anybody does a problem. And if they do it wrong and they don't get to go ahead and move, they have to redo. They see that and they see what they had to do to redo. And so then they learn from that. So it's kind of an interesting way to encourage your oranges to participate.
And I was thinking about if you were teaching little ones and you were reading them a story, and if you have several children in your household of that age, that you probably have different colors in that group, or even if you're just doing individually to your child, it'll be interesting how they receive that story. Let's say, for instance, that the story is about a bird that fell out of the nest that was in a bush. And when you have a baby bird on the ground and the mama's screeching at it and worried about it and that sort of thing. And so that's the basis of the story, where your goal would just be listening for the story and expecting the story to move, from point 1 to point 2 to point 3, and enjoying it that way. The blue might be thinking about the feelings of the bird and how scared the mama is and what's going to happen, and is really thinking in that era and kind of worried, about the bird. The green is probably thinking about, how far was that fall, and did that hurt them, and how did they survive that fall, and did they flap their wings a little bit so they didn't fall so hard, really thinking about, how valid is this story? How come the bird's not hurt? And then the orange needs to be active in the story. So the orange, you might give the project of anytime there's a sound effect, you chirp like a bird, you flap your wings, anything they can do to be active and listen carefully for when they have to come up with their motion or their sound. And that would be a way to get everybody involved in that little story that you're talking about. And you're very aware of how they're receiving that story because you know their personalities.
Well, if you enjoy these podcasts, please help us out by following and subscribing and then sharing with your friends. Also, we remind you to check the show notes accompanying the podcast for additional information. Remember, our books, the Handbook for Parent Educators and the accessory workbooks for teens and elementary students, can be purchased on Amazon. Simply choose the books option and key in Homeschool Tackle Box or Tackle Box Learn All About You to get those books.
Thank you for joining us today. Personality assessments can be fun and very informative. We hope you are inspired to test yourself and your children so you can use this important information to teach the way that your children learn. Please join us next time as we continue to help you build your children's personal learning profiles. Thank you for listening to our Homeschool Tacklecast today. We invite you to join us next time as we cast our line into new and innovative strategies to help you keep your children engaged and excited about learning.
We suggest you go to our website, teacherstacklebox.com/homeschool, and explore what we have to offer in the Homeschool Tacklebox Handbook and also in the teen and elementary workbooks for your children.
Feel free to email us through the contact page on our website. We promise to respond to your questions, comments, and concerns in a timely manner.
Until another day, bait your hook, cast your line, and let's go fishing.